Welcome to the Gentleman Project podcast. I'm Corey Moore.
And I'm Kirk Chug. Today we have Anthony Trucks on the podcast. We're super excited to have him here. He's joining us from Walnut Creek, California today. Corey's also in California this morning. I'm back here in Utah, so we're doing this all virtually. But God bless the technology that enables us to do this and look at each other and have a great conversation. We're excited to have you with us today. Thanks for joining us on the podcast. So Anthony Trucks, I'm going to let him do a little quick intro of himself, but this guy has played in the NFL. He grew up in circumstances that I'm going to let him explain. They're just amazing. He's an amazing personal interest story, and the way that he has created shift in his own life has inspired me. And so we're super excited to have Anthony Trucks with us. Welcome, Anthony, to the Gentleman Project podcast this morning.
Hey, man. Thank you for having me. It's a cool name, though. I'm not going to lie. The Gentleman Project. I've heard like the Dad Project and stuff like that. Who says chivalry is dead, man? We got this.
It ain't dead. It ain't dead.
Man.
A lot of women listen to the podcast as well. And cool. I think it's because they long for a few more gentlemen in their lives. And really the thing that makes gentlemen also make, women great women. And
humans at the end of the day, period, man or woman. It's if you do it right, it's just living a good life and doing good things for people.
Exactly. So Anthony, tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about how and where you grew up.
Yeah. So, I grew up, I guess, give you the quick rundown, man. I grew up in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. I was born in Martinez in 1983, man. I'm not quite 40 yet. I'm getting there. I'm pushing it. I've had more than enough years in that 37 years though. But I was given away at 3 years old, to the foster care system, which is a very heinous system, man. So I've been surviving for a long time. And for about 3 years, I bounced around from house to house. A lot of heinous, weird things take place. And I landed in a family, which is my family now. Unique thing is I'm the only black person in an all-white family, except for my brother-in-law. My sister married a black guy. So I got a brother that's a brother now. And so I progressed through trying to navigate the pitfalls of who am I? Where do I fit? What do I do? The dads I had in my life weren't great men most of the time. My dad, who's my dad now, great. He's a good guy. I'm not going to lie. He's a good guy, hard worker. He's only 12 years older than me. So it's not like I have this seasoned, veteran, wise human that I can lean on. Not to knock him in any way. Love him, love his heart, but there's just that reality to it. And I got adopted at 14 after 11 years in the system, entered this world of trying to figure out sports and I was sucking at something, got good at it, and eventually was blessed to beat the crazy statistics and make it out of, the system I was in and get a college scholarship to go to University of Oregon, which I got a helmet in the background if anybody could see. So I played in a cool world, man. I got to do some great things, and I had a kid at 19 years old. I married my high school sweetheart at the end of college, went through college, got out of it, went to the NFL. NFL stands for not for long because you get in, man, things happen. The body just says, not today. And then I got hurt, tore my shoulder, came home and went to a major identity crisis, had a couple more kids, life fell apart, got divorced, didn't want to be here at one point. And after I would call about good 6 to 7 years in a fog, which is that survival mode, I finally woke up, man, and decided I wanted to have a better outcome for life because the path I was on was not headed in a place I wanted to go in the long run. And I started making some shifts. And so I guess that's my really condensed story of things that I guess we could throw out there. We could pick apart at some point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I was going to say, Anthony, so let's start kind of at the beginning. I have 1,000 questions for you now.
All right.
Let's start at the beginning. So you said you grew up in a tough foster care type of world, found a great family, which is awesome. Talk to us about what helped you get through that. Like, what are the lessons learned in your youth that helped you to get, ultimately to the NFL? And then we'll go into the second story of your life. But talk to us about the lessons learned on early and how did you do it? How did you go from, there's 1,000 paths that you could have taken, but you took the path of stepping up. Why? How?
To be honest, it wasn't a plan. It was, so when you're a foster kid, you don't actually believe you have much in you. That's the problem. My own mom didn't want me or my 3 siblings, so that we get shipped off. So you're starting out not only behind the ball, because statistically, any prison in America, 75% of our inmates are former foster kids. If you go to the homeless population, over half the homeless population are former foster kids, and less than 1% of us ever graduate from college. So the moment my mom put me into the system, man, I was headed down a statistical landslide into nothing. And the thing that was different, and I don't even know if it was different in the beginning, but it was over time, was my adoptive mom, who was in that last family. We grew up real poor, not a smart family. My dad was young, mom was young, a bunch of kids, like, just prototypical. You'd look at it and be like, man, we're like kind of like white trash. Like, that's how we grew up. I make a dumb joke. I grew up poor white trash. but dude, we had no shortage of love. That's it, dude. I had no shortage from her of love, and illogical love is the thing I would say. It didn't make sense. Why are you being so good to me? I don't deserve this. Like, that's that weird thought. And so for a lot of my years, I didn't make sense. I wouldn't let them in. Then at 14, 11 years later, 8 years with this family, I got adopted, and I finally went on this trajectory of building something. And you wonder what was the thing that kicked it on? I think eventually, dude, I just got fed up. I think you at some point you get to the point of you're fed up with the way life's living. To be honest, what happened was I spent 2 years trying to play this game I love, which was football, but I was horrible at it. And we can all attest to a moment in time we tried something new. I'm sure this podcast, you guys probably started like, I kind of suck, but you keep on doing it, right? And eventually you guys get to be as good as you are. And the idea is like you build, and most people they'll leave the arena far too early because they don't want to deal with the emotional pain of facing the fact that they suck. So for me, I did that like we all do. And then I had a moment where some girl in a class had made this simple statement that I heard and I embodied in a different way. She said to somebody else, no idea I'm listening, well, the reason I'm so bad is because I'm in foster care. And it was one of those statements where at face value, it's like, it's just some little girl making an excuse. However, when it's your excuse and you hear it out loud, it can be really unsettling. And I think we all can get that gift some point in time. But like that gift she gave me was like, I don't want to have something I had no control over depict my outcomes in life forever. Like I couldn't control foster care. Like it was this weird thought of like, it just didn't feel right. I remember going home and I seriously, I'm not making this up, man. I stood in front of a mirror and at 15 years old, stared myself in the pupils and just said, you're going to be great. Like it was a weird if you were like a fly in the wall, you'd be like, what's up with this crazy little kid? Like staring at himself, talking to himself in a mirror. But genuinely, that's what I did. And then it put me on this trajectory towards finding out how to I was fed up with sucking into things. And it really, what the lesson I grabbed was, dude, no one's coming to save you. Like a lot of things in life, they are not our fault. It was not my fault for the situation I was in. None of it was my fault. However, it 1,000,000% is my responsibility to make something of the situation. Because no one's going to come out. I'm not going to get a white knight to come in, and there's no cape coming in to save my life. Dude, I got to do it. And so for me, I think the one thing I had was a woman who loved me enough to give me a perspective of maybe I could do something better, or I deserve something better. And that went towards me convincing myself of that same reality. And I did it through actions, and it turned into the man I am now. But that was the pivotal moment that's freshman to sophomore year where I just decided to show up differently for myself for a good 7-month stretch. And it just totally shifted the entire trajectory of my life.
Okay. So that's 7 months. What did you do in that 7 months? What was your first step?
Oh, man. Well, I wanted to be great. And when you're 15, you have 2 options to be great at that time. You can get girls' phone numbers because that's what we did back then. You guys know.
Yeah.
You had to call the house and be like, I hope her dad doesn't pick up. I hope her dad doesn't pick up. Oh, man. You get anxiety thinking about it now. The other thing was I'm going to be great at this thing I want to be good at with football, but I don't know how to be great. But what do? Well, I'm going to look at the guys who are already great and see what it is they do. The problem is, it's not who you are to do it yet. So you go into this thing and you feel like a fish out of water. You feel like that imposter. So I'm like, well, the only way I can find a way to be good as them is to end up doing what they do. So let me do those things. And the first couple of weeks, people make fun of you, like, you suck, Trucks. Because I couldn't catch a football. I was slow. I was weak. Trucks, you suck, man. What are you doing out there? Like, I don't know. I'm trying to get better. And you just keep on doing it. So first month, you still feel bad. Second month, I don't know. And I would lift every weight. I would go in the weight room for hours and just lift weights. No idea what I was doing. I'd go outside and run routes to get my feet good. I know what I was doing. I would have a buddy of mine, Joey Garcia, go to Chichibu Park in Antioch and throw me footballs. We had no idea what we were doing. But here's the thing that took place, man. Month 1, it's like, I don't know. Month 2, like, yeah, you still kind of. Month 3, like, you're getting some progression. Month 4, you're like, all right, you're getting okay. Month 5, like, hey, I'm feeling pretty good. Month 6, like, hey, I'm doing it. 7, I'm dope. Don't you dare tell me I'm not good. And it wasn't this mentality of I was actually good, because I'm obviously, you put me in a game, I'm not going to be like this killer. However, when I showed up the next series of practices in the off season, dude, I was a monster. but it wasn't the speed, the strength, the ability. It was the man inside I had become. There's a statement that I tell people, which is what you create creates you. And that process of creation is what took place. I created a stronger body, created a faster ability. I created, but it was a physical creation of something, like Michelangelo creating a sculpture, someone creating a business. You don't create that thing and then come back and look at it and go, no, I'm not a sculptor. No, bro, you just made a masterpiece. You're a sculptor. You're a X, you're a Y. So I walked in there, and what it was I had done too much work in the dark for you to take what was mine in the light. I'm catching the football. I am tackling you. You are not tackling me. Don't you even consider it. Like, bro, this is my time. And so when it came down to it, like, I was a dude who just had a motor that you couldn't shut down at that point. And it came from 7 months earlier, a kid who was checked out sleeping in class. The only separation was the work I had done to invest in the future person I wanted to be. And that was the process, man. And it's honestly showed up in my life many times over. But it wasn't until like my 30s I really realized what in the heck I was doing. I was like, oh, I've been doing that. And then I went and uncovered it. I even went through and understood, like, what's the psychology behind this? Like, how did the neuroscience, like, how did my like the plasticity of my brain, like, rewire? What did I do? And now I figured out how to do it. And I have a method that I walk people through. But that was the process back then where, like, it was an accident and it became something amazing.
Yeah, that's like solid gold stuff right there. So I want to break that down and bring it back to what we do as dads and parents, right?
Yeah.
So how do you practice being a parent if you're not there, right? The time that you have to spend with your kids is your practice. That is your throwing the ball in the park. Showing up for your kids and saying the right things or saying the wrong things is your practice every day. Mm-hmm. And it's so unstructured in life that, you come home and there is no structure. There is no coach saying, okay, now go over on the couch and talk to your kid about how his day was and say this. And then tomorrow you're going to say this and this and this. We have such an unstructured life as parents that how do we show up and create that structure in our life that we come home and we know exactly what we're going to do for practice because we got to see where we are and where we're going. And unless we know exactly what to do or have somebody tell us what to do with that specific kid, right? And every kid's different. Then how do we do that? Like, how do we be our own coach?
Mm-hmm. I got that, man. This is, I've lived this. So at one point after NFL, college, all that fun stuff, I'm married, have kids, and my marriage fell apart. And this is why my marriage fell apart. I was fighting an emotional demon. And the emotional demon was, I in my head, I wanted to be with my kids. When I was with my kids, I wanted to be at work. Not because of like, I didn't want to be there, but I had a project that was on my heart. I had this thing I wanted to get done that inspired me to create it. And I wanted to be with my kids. I couldn't figure out how do I flip the switch? Because I felt like a bad, horrible human. It's like, I feel like a bad dad right now. And I started looking at this, like how we as humans work, because it's an emotional thing. I don't know how to trigger that thing and turn it off. And I found that emotions are triggered by actions. They are. If I do an action, I get an emotion. When I invest into something, I have this return and this feel of a love for it, right? So the thing is, we're telling ourselves, I want to be with my kids. I do it for my family. All that's good and well. But then you're not where you are when you are mentally. Yeah. You're back at home or back at work. So what I found was like my actual progression towards fixing all of this in my own life, because I was divorced for 3 years and got remarried to my same ex-wife and have an amazing marriage. But here's the things. When I was in those moments, I wanted to be at the gym I had owned. I wanted to build this thing, create this thing. And when I went home, I wanted to be at the gym building still. I want to build. I have this, right? And then I'd be home and I'd feel like I couldn't wait to get done with it. I was like, why? Well, I wasn't actually trying to invest the time to create the emotion with my kids. I was just trying to be there and kind of bide the time to go back. And so when I pulled it apart, I was like, oh, I just have to focus and actually try to spend time here. And it's the same thing. At first, I didn't want to be playing weird little games and puzzles. The thought of having to learn the rules to this stupid game, it drove I'd like, oh, anxiety. I don't want to learn how to play this stupid game right now. You really got to play Pokemon, right? I didn't want to do it. But then what do you do? Well, you start learning the rules and then you play that card and you do this. And here's the thing. Where your focus goes, energy flows. My focus wasn't on work. It was now focused on learning the game, trying to beat my son, watching him be happy, going and playing hoops in the backyard. And now all of a sudden, I'm not even thinking about work. I think the thing is when we tell a kid, like, don't eat the donut, they're thinking about the donut, even if it's not eating the donut, as opposed to go eat a sandwich. Now I'm focused on something else. I'm not even thinking about not eating the donut. I'm not thinking about the donut. So when I was with the kids, like the thing is, I think how dads can look at it is you got to try to find a way to actually allocate your focus into that moment. Give yourself the hour, dude. The world's not going to burn. Even if you sat here for the hour thinking about that, that doesn't get any better. It just ruins this time right now. And so if you focus on this and do that, here's the crazy thing. The same emotional attachment you have to the joy you would have with the work you'd be doing if you were there, that actually comes over and it's like fivefold with the kids. Because here's the thing that I don't think anybody grasps. When I wasn't good at home, I was at work and I had this fog of knowing my wife or my kids, like they're like at home, they know I'm disconnected. So I feel this heaviness and this weight. Then I would come home and I would be at home and I'd be at work in my brain and I'd get in arguments. So I'd have a negative environment in the house and then I'd go to work. When I'm when I'm at work and I don't have a solid home base, I can't work on focus. I couldn't be here right now with you guys in joy if after this, we're not going to go hang out as a family, or if yesterday I wasn't present with my son during boxing, because I know there's that anger, that weird, like my wife's going to be all rude in the house, So for me, I found that not only just focusing on them in those moments in time dial me, and I actually have fun now, it makes me feel so much more free when I'm doing my work. And it's an amazing synergy.
I love how you talked about being present. That's kind of the idea there, is take action in what is most important, because it'll become important. That we've had that discussion on other podcasts, but it hasn't been as well put as you just did. I appreciate that. So talk to us about this fog you were in and how you got out of the fog. Was that via this same kind of idea that I'm going to put time into where I want importance to be, or talk to us about what happened there and how you got out of it?
Yeah. It's different because that fog wasn't only apparent. It was partially a parenting fog. So I was in this moment where, like, I'd come home from the NFL and football was no longer part of my life. And I don't care what it is that we're doing. If we've invested, up to a decade or more into something of our time and our energy and our life, what happens is one day, by choice or by chance, I sell the business, I take a new job, I start a business, right? Or the marriage falls apart, I leave the military, I leave sports, whatever it is. There's a day when you wake up and you're no longer doing that thing, whatever it is, and for whatever reason. And when you're not doing it, who am I without that thing? I don't know the answer. I don't know how to show up in the day. And so I had that with football when I came out. And it led into me having a lot of issues. And what I'll explain it as is kind of like this, the fruit of my labor. My marriage was falling apart. I wasn't a good dad, all this stuff. I had this fruit of football. And like the fruit of our labor, we're this fruit and it falls off the tree. And like any piece of fruit, we can last for a little bit. This apple can last for a while. It can get picked up by the farmer, taken to the store, taken from the store to my house, on the counter. But eventually, the apple rots. And we feel rotten. We feel like empty and just decrepit, right? And for a lot of my years, that fog was me being the rotten apple, dude. I just got up and I didn't have that I wasn't in the zone. I wasn't in the flow like I used to be, when I played sports, or when someone's running doing the corporate gig and they're just killing with the team and they're making numbers. It's when you're in that zone, man, you are more you than you can ever imagine. Then you lose it. You're like, well, who am I? I was in that fog of like, I'm getting up and I'm going to work and I'm getting the paycheck and I'm doing the thing, but I go home and it's a Groundhog Day and I don't really feel dialed, and I just kind of drifted off, to be quite honest. And then that's in my head, like all of a sudden I wasn't the same guy. So the marriage falls apart, the kids. And here's what I've realized. This whole time I thought that I was the fruit. I was this apple, but I've never been the apple. None of us have. We've always been the tree. And when you lose sight of the fact that you're the tree, you lose sight of the rest of the fruit. So you stop giving, nutrients, watering the tree. You stop giving it sun. You stop taking care of pruning the branches. So apparently all the rest of the fruit dies. So when I lost football, everything else, it was inevitable to die because I wasn't taking care of the tree. So you asked like that fog and what was going on in it. I got through this. I was going through the fog for years. I went through this gym business. I got divorced. So I'm, doing the multiple partners thing and running around and feeling ridiculously empty and like it was a fog. I call it the dark times of my life. It's dark. I don't remember a lot of it, but I do. It's just awkward. And then unfortunately, it's a moment where my mom passed away. My adoptive mom, who would love me at a level that didn't make sense, man, she lost a 17-year-old battle with multiple sclerosis. And I remember having this thought of like, I am living this life that she gave me the opportunity to live. I'm living it wrong. I remember looking in the mirror as actually January 1st, 2016, New Year's Day, kind of hung over with some woman in the bed that I really didn't even know. And it was just this, I looked in the mirror, dude, and I kid you not, like I had this deep wave of like anger and shame and hatred for self. I didn't like me. So I would never want my daughter to ever be with a man like that. I would never want my sons to be like that man. And I would never want my mom to know him. My God wouldn't let me into heaven, period. I was like, this cannot continue on the way it is. And it was like this awakening of like, all right, I'm gonna find a way to change. And I had to figure out a wake back up, to be quite honest. And so like I swore off women. I had to figure out this life thing, man. And it was a journey, dude. It was one of these, like, I had to get inside and figure out where was I as the common denominator in all my problems. That's the biggest lesson, to be honest, is the catalyst. Because if I didn't realize I was a common denominator, I wouldn't look at me to find a solution. I would cast blame places. And I was doing that. We all do. Oh, she, did what she did, so marriage fell apart. And the market sucks, so the business isn't good. And I'm just busy, so I can't eat right. I gotta focus here, and I gotta work, so I can't go to the kids' games. Like, we can make all these things. But the reality is not, I wasn't showing up as the guy. I was not in my zone. And I spent 10 months grinding, I'm talking some of the hardest conversations with myself and other people that I've ever had. To this day, I get nerves thinking about having to rehash the same conversation if I had to. Like, that's how difficult they were. They were just really difficult ones. And so in doing so, I got a chance to see me. And when I saw me and I realized who I was, I realized that's not who I want to be. And I started saying, okay, who do I want to actually be? Who's the guy I want to be? What does he look like as a dad, as a husband? What does he look like as his body, as a leader, right? What does he look like? I said, great, just like football. What do I do? What are the things I got to do to be that guy? And I still wasn't even thinking of the concept of what I do now, but I kind of went to what I knew, right? It was ingrained in me kind of already. So I started doing those things, and little by little, having hard conversations, showing up at the gym, being a present dad, cutting clients off. I even closed my gym at one point. I'm like, I can't let this gym business get in the way of my family and my kids. And so I started doing that. And fast forward 10 months of some grinding. I'm a man who believes in God. Not everybody has to, and that's fine if they don't. But at the same time, my ex-wife was on the other side of this relationship doing the same thing. We'd been high school sweethearts. We were like cutest couple in the yearbook, right? Had kids, all this stuff, and it all came tumbling down. We were kids having kids. It was weird. And she was at the same time doing her work at the like August, September window of 2016. Somehow, after, I'm talking years of I hate your guts, leave me alone. Like, just, I'm talking, you know how it goes when you break up with somebody. You know all the buttons to push. Years of that, dude. It could turn into these different conversations. They weren't rekindling. It was more of like, I own my stuff. I respect you as a human. Just be a good co-parents. She invited me on a vacation just to get away from the craziness of our small town we were in. Cause you know how small towns are. It's just everybody knows everybody, everything talks. So I was like, let's just get out of here. So for 3 weeks, we went to Costa Rica. And the best way I can explain it is I got to meet somebody for the first time that I'd known for 16 years. Different human, different heart, different perspectives. And we didn't even rekindle it then. We actually went back home, and I was about to go on my first date in a long time. So I'm about to go on a date. The day before the date, she comes over and goes, hey, I want to try this again. Like, what are we talking about? Like this, and first ruin the date. Absolutely ruin the date. Because in your head, you're like, man, do I finally have the person that I married, that I really wanted? Like, can this work? And at the same time, like, but my friends who are here during the craziness, they're not going to let this work. Like, you got to get their blessing, all these things. Sure enough, she goes and calls them, has these phone conversations in person. And some of them told me like they dug into her and she took it like a woman. They're like, oh, I give you my blessing. And they gave us the blessing. And so like that allowed me to rekindle. So that was the big catalyst and the big moment of like my marriage, 3 years divorce, remarried. My kids have a present dad. I run a business that doesn't interfere, but also it impacts millions of lives around the world. I get to do some cool things. But the biggest lessons I learned from that were I'm the common denominator. I got to do things that really don't feel like they are me. The conversation, the things that I never used to tell this story. Are you kidding me? This is a story that most men aren't going to tell.
Right.
But like I had to find out how to communicate at a higher level, how to own, I had to work on. And then I had to do the work consistently. It wasn't going to happen for a month or 2 months or 3 months. Like when I was a kid, it was 7 months. This time it was 10 months. If I had get into a darker hole, bro, it's going to be like 10 years to come out of it. I'm hoping I don't go anywhere, right? But the idea is like, that's the journey for all people. And if people can lean in and understand that you're not, here's the thing, you cannot be tied, nor was I tied to the outcome of the achievement. The achievement would have been if my goal was not to rekindle my marriage. My goal was not to make more money in business. That was not the goal. The simple goal was, can I be proud of the man I go to bed as? Can I be proud of his effort? Because when I attach my identity to the effort, when you give the effort, you get the outcome of achievement. But most people are tying the achievement to their identity. So if I haven't achieved it, every night I go to bed thinking, I'm not him, I'm not him, I'm not him, I'm not him. Whereas when I was going to bed, I'm like, I just want to be able to have a hard conversation. I want to be able to show up for my kids' sports games. I want to get in the gym and get a workout in and feel good again. Like I was tied to the effort I was giving, and I popped my head up and I created a cool life again.
You know, I think this is super important, what you're talking about. And I think it's important to talk to our kids about this, because what you're describing is where your identity lied was what you were doing, not who you were.
Yeah.
And I think we all do this, and certainly kids do it. We've talked about this on past podcasts, but the idea is, am I an NFL player or am I Anthony Trucks? Am I, and if you think about our kids, right? We want them to be proud of who they are, not their identity to rest in what they do, or who they're married to, or who their friends are, or what sport they play, or if they're really good at chess, whatever it is. The identity needs to be, who am I? You woke up and you said, I'm going to define who I am, who Anthony Trucks is. And then when I know who that is and I'm proud of it, then what I do is coming from that core, or as you described it, the tree.
Exactly.
Right? You were working on the tree, not the apples.
And the apples come back, man.
And I hope
better fruit.
Yeah, I hope my kids, I'm going to have my kids listen to this, because I want them to understand that working on defining who you are and then having that solid trunk, then you can work on the what, everything. I think that was really good, Anthony.
Thank you, man. It's this concept of roots and fruits. If you get the roots right, which is faith, family, health, friends, and emotional control, if you get the roots right, you take care of that tree, it produces sweeter and more abundant fruit. It just does. Like, so where I thought I was football and it affected everything negatively, when I took care of the tree again, I got it the right environment, right soil, gave it the right nutrients, When I did that, it produced, and it does produce, vastly better fruit than the NFL ever could have.
So, Anthony, a lot of this story that you have told, there's a ton of forgiveness in this story.
Yeah, very much so.
The way that you were raised, the things that you were able to overcome, the people that treated you poorly as you were a child, not having, like, you could have held a grudge against so many people. And I'm assuming at some point you probably did. So how did you overcome that? I've been having the conversation with my family this week about forgiveness. Yeah. And so I want you to kind of talk to us about how forgiveness has played a role in this transformation and what role it's played in your life moving forward.
Yeah, vast. I mean, there's a lot of depth of forgiveness, man. Because, and I shared this, like my marriage fell apart because my wife stepped out, right? So there was that piece of it. And I never will say that it was okay what she did. What she did was horrible, right? It is. But it was a bad choice. And you don't get to a point of making a choice unless you're pushed that way. So it took two people to get to a point of where she was at, even thinking she needed to make a choice in the first place. So I take my ownership for that. She's still, to this day, it's a bad choice, right? We don't talk about it because there's other conversations as to why. And here's the big thing. At the end of the day, is it Sun Tzu? I don't know who, I got to look it up. It talks about when you finally understand your enemy, you love your enemy.
Yeah, the art of war.
Art of war, right? So, and what it is when you, and I say enemy, and I only mean enemy, we'll call it the opposition. When I came to find clarity on the people that I interact with or have done negative, my real mom, my real dad who left, and I found out later he left and knew it, never came back. People had stolen money from me, my ex-wife, right? I looked at all the situations they were in, and I started to try to find, like, if I wasn't attached to this person, let me look at this person. As a human being, How are they? And what I came to find was most people are lacking some skill sets, some abilities. No one gave them the training on this. So what they were doing was, if at any part, their biggest problem, or we'll call it their biggest, thing, was they were selfish. They were seeking something for them, not to actively, maliciously hurt me. She didn't do what she did to make me feel bad because I was working. She was doing what she was doing because she was missing something. She was seeking a selfish need for herself and not having the conversation. My mom, she thought that giving me away was going to allow her the freedom to go live her life and do her thing, or to not have to be able to have to raise her kids. My dad selfishly figured, well, I got a family. I was out of wedlock. Like, I'm going to go do that. It's a selfish. People steal from me. They need the money. It's not like I'm going to steal because I only want Anthony to have nothing. They're thinking about what they can buy with the stuff for themselves, right? So when I started realizing that the situation, I was like, man, as opposed to being pissed, I had like pity, like I had compassion. And so I look at the situation like, it must be super dark to have to sneak around with your kids and do dark things like my wife was doing. Like, that's a dark place to be. Like, what kind of, like, that's a heavy heart. My mom, to live every day knowing she gave her kids away and I get to do cool things and she can't come back into my life at this point. Like, that's a heavy heart for a long time. My dad lived until his last days when he had cancer with a secret, knowing he walked away from a son, right? It's a heaviness to carry. And so at that point, I was like, man, I have a compassion as a human to a human. If they didn't have any interaction with me and I just met them on the street and I could feel that, I'm like, man, it's a heavy heart. So what do? Do I carry the anger for them? Because that's what's going to happen. I'm going to carry it because I won't forgive. And do I have this negative thing just eat at me, or do I go, you know what, man? One, I didn't do it to hurt me on purpose. Two, they've got their punishment. It's a slow killer. It's a cancer inside that lives, right? There's that. I don't gotta hold that. And at the same time, if I truly care about humanity, I want humans to be better. I just do. As a person to a person, I want humans around me to be better. And if I can relieve and alleviate some of what's pressing them down so they can grow, like, then I'm gonna do that. So what I wanted with my ex-wife is I wanted a great mom for my kids. And she had this shame I could see eking through everything she was doing. And the moment I said, look, I forgive you for what you did, I had my role and I apologize for what I did, like a little bit of a brightness came to be. And I think that's what allowed her to actually open up a little bit more and come back into the space. Imagine if I kept shaming her year after year for the rest of her life. That's not the space for someone to feel good, to have great kids and be a great mom. It's just not. So my one focus was I want her to be a good mom. And if her being a great mom's tied to her being a great person, how can I help that? I can help by removing that board over the tree, over the bush. I remove the board, sun can get to it, it can actually grow. And that was a process for me of forgiveness for all people. People do some heinous things, man. People are the best and the absolute worst part of this world. It just is. It sucks, but it's the truth, man. But the ones who have done me wrong, at the end of the day, it's like, golly, what kind of life do you got to be living right now to be having that experience? And when people do me wrong, I sit back, I tell my wife, look, the worst punishment they can have is to continue having to live their life. So don't even stress off it. Go back and do us.
Yeah, that's good advice, Anthony. It doesn't help us. It only hurts us if we hold on. Yeah. Right? We can't grow our roots if we're holding on to what other people might have done to us. So you mentioned a little bit ago, like some of the things you take your clients through. And you've been through some fantastic things in your life that have allowed you to grow and become the man that you are, the gentleman that you are. I want to ask you, how are you teaching your kids some of the lessons learned? How do you give them a piece of yourself so that they have, they can internalize some of the lessons that you've learned in your life?
The funny thing is, it's not like I can sit down and say, all right, guys, here's class today. We're going to sit down and learn about this moment in time when somebody cuts you off in traffic. Life is its own class. I think that's the beauty of how this thing is designed and built, is it's an amazing teacher. The problem is a lot of people, they leave class, they avoid class, and they never pass the test when they come, or they never learn the lesson. So for me, I have come to find that the best thing I can do is two things to have my kids learn lessons. First thing is logic, and it's obvious that people drop the ball, but I live my life in a way that is a lesson. And I do it by putting myself in front of situations that they get to see. They see me on stage. I talk about my day, the good and the bad. They see mom and dad have arguments and how we handle that. Like, they see me love on my wife. They see it all. And that, I think, is the thing that will ingrain itself more than words ever can. It's a story they can tell later from an experience that holds a lesson for their life. And so I know that every single moment of my day is not a passing random moment. It's a lesson. It just is. It's you're watching how dad would do it. So when they're in those moments, they go, that's how it should be done. Yesterday, my son, my oldest son, he drives. He was at home with my youngest daughter. My wife and I were out picking my son up from grandma's house in San Francisco. And we saw a notification from the little app that he had come home. We're like, where'd he go? It shows Chipotle. We're like, I wonder if he got something for his sister. And I'm like, I think he did. My wife was like, no, I don't think he did. He's about his money. I'm like, that kid, he does what's right. Like he's when he's thinking of it, he does what's right. We checked the bank account. Sure enough, $20 went out. He bought her lunch. He bought her dinner. He didn't have to buy his sister dinner, but he did. And what I know about him is like, the lesson is when something's right, you know it's right, you do what's right. It's a trigger. And it's like the conversation isn't had in his head. You think about it, you know it's right. He does that, right? So that's a lesson he's learned through years of watching me do things, just period. The other second part of it is we cannot rob our kids of their hardships. I think too many parents try to make their kids' lives easier. I want it to be okay. And it's like, dude, you're stunting their growth. My wife like oversees the kids' homework and stuff. I'm like, it's good to help them, but you can't be the person where when they walk away, they can't handle this because you've done nothing for them in the long run. You've helped short term, but long term, how are they going to teach your grandkids to do it? Right. So the thing is, for me, it's like I'm really big on when they have their moments, let them have their moments. Let them get picked on at school. Let them have a bad game. Let them do all that. And then now when I see their face, hey, son, hey, daughter, let me tell you something real quick. Now they've experienced it. And it's kind of like teaching someone to swing a bat who's never swung a bat. It's hard to tell them how to grip the bat, turn your feet. They don't feel it. But once they've gone through it, swung the bat a couple times, now it's like, okay, here's how you swing it. Oh, okay, now it makes sense. So I let them go swing the bat, even if it hurts to watch. But then I can get them to understand it better later.
Such good stuff. Such good stuff. How many kids do you have? We didn't cover that at the very beginning.
I got tres bebés. I got an oldest who's 16, and I got 11-year-old twins, boy and a girl.
Awesome. You want to give them a message from their dad on the podcast today?
Just, you know what? I hope they become proud and happy. I think if you're happy and proud, a lot of things happen because when you're proud, you don't let yourself down. You know, like you'll do what you got to do to stay in that position. And if you're happy, you'll do things with joy. You can't always be happy because that's reality. But if you're proud, you'll do the things that are actions and suffering. So I find joy in the actions. It's just magic in the motion of doing things. I've actually done something called a legacy letter for my kids, it's a cool thing this guy Blake does. But I mean, to be honest, man, if I could wish upon a star, I want them to be proud of themselves, not just know mom and dad are proud of you, proud of yourself and show up for that person you're proud of. And I want them to be happy with what they do because there are people who are proud and hate their lives. You know, they live these quiet lives of desperation. And I'm like, man, I want you to find someone when you wake up. Like, I'm not even joking. Sometimes I have this weird, it feels like pain from how much joy I have when I walk in the house and I see my family. It's a weird thing to be able to communicate into words. It's this, I just want to say, I want to yell at the top of my lungs in all of their earlobes that I love them. Like, just like, I want it out of me. You know, it's just this. And that for me, dude, that's a different kind of level of happy and joy. And I'll get that if I put them out into the world, confident that they have the skill sets and the lessons learned to be able to function or to at least be able to get through the problem in front of them. Just that one, because each one gives you new tools to handle the next one and the next one. So even if I'm not around, I hope that I put them out and they're prepared. And I hope they know that I just want them to be proud and happy.
I'm kind of thinking about the lessons that you've taught me today and that we've talked about today. And I'm hearing, you know, love as a basis for raising your kids, right? They've got to feel like they're loved. Someone needs to love them. That's a huge gift we can give our children for sure. Although it sounds simple, maybe one of the most important. And then give them a sense of self-worth, right? So they're proud of themselves. They know who they are. And then let them fail sometimes, right? Like let them experience the world. If you have love and self-worth and self-confidence in who you are, it's going to be okay to have a bad game. It's going to be okay to screw up in a relationship. It's going to be okay to like have what's going to happen. The bad things happen. Yeah. Right. And then I'm going to quote myself, but because you and I think of the world very similar. And I always tell my kids happiness is a choice. Yeah. And it's not always a choice, but about 90% of the time You can decide how you're going to react. Similar
True.
to when you were a kid. Yeah, I can decide that I'm going to be picked on, or that I have a hard life, which you did. But I also can look in the mirror and say, it's up to me to change it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I think awesome lessons learned from Mr. Trucks today.
So Anthony, tell us a little bit about the book that you have coming out in August, and how do people get it? What's it about?
Yeah, the book's called Identity Shift, Upgrade How You Operate to Elevate Your Life. And it's pretty much my life story, but also like it's codified. I took out the things that I've learned and studied and experimented with in my own life, and then had clients work through over the years to really refine a battle-tested process to get back into that zone of like who you are when you're at your best, because that is what you need to be in to achieve whatever crazy goals you want. And yeah, man, it comes out in August, and it's designed in a way to give people an actual step-by-step, like dog ear it, learn the process, go do the work. And on the back end of it, man, you'll made shift happen. It's my whole thing. And what's cool is if you guys, anybody's listening to your podcast, man, I created a code TGP. And so if they go to identityshiftbook.com and they use the code TGP on step 3, they'll actually get an audiobook for free with it. The first 10 people, I'll give them a signed copy. So they'll have 2 copies. One will be signed. And I'll send it to them. And then on top of that, they'll get a workbook that guides them through what I'm talking about. Like it's some of my coaching put into a very specific workbook, and they'll get a digital version if they want to watch on their phone or read on their phone or something. But some cool things to say. Thank you for having me on, but also get the message to the world, because I think more human beings need it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Anthony. That's cool. TGP, give them the URL one more time.
Identityshiftbook.com.
We end the podcast with, the same question to everyone, Anthony, and that is, what does it mean to you to be a gentleman?
Be a gentleman. Man, I think a gentleman means to be gentle. I would leave it as that, man. And I think gentle in a couple things. Gentle with the people you're around, because everybody is, remember that game back in the day where you could pull a stick and the marble would fall? You know, like you couldn't tell which stick, but dude, everybody seems to be a stick away from the marble falling. You know, it's kind of the crazy part. And I think be gentle with the human beings you interact with, because they're living crazy lives with nothing in the background. And then also be gentle with yourself. And in doing so, like, gentle doesn't mean to be soft, right? You could gently catch an egg, but there's pressure to slow it down, right? There's strength within that. So if you're gentle with yourself, man, like give yourself some grace, dude. It's okay. But then like go back in the world and create something. Like there's nothing wrong with that. I think being a gentleman is living a life gently, but doing it at a level that is respectable, but also allows you to fully enjoy every moment you're living.
Anthony, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure to meet you, and hopefully we get to see each other in person sometime soon. Thanks for joining us on the Gentleman Project podcast today. Anthony Trucks, if they want to connect with you, they can go to your website, find you on Instagram. You're the only Anthony Trucks, right?
Yeah, that's it.
And connect with him. His messages are inspirational, and it's another one of those worthwhile follows for sure. When you see the type of content that he produces and the type of goodness that he puts out into the world, you'll want to follow him and be connected with him and have him be a part of what you consume on social media. Thanks for joining us this week. Join us next week as we welcome another awesome guest and give you the tools that you need to be great parents, great people, and make a difference in the world. I'm Kirk Chugg.
And I'm Corey Moore.
Thanks for joining us on the Gentleman Project podcast. And thanks, Anthony Trucks, for joining us today.
Welcome.